The Dutch Tulip Mania of the 17th century is often portrayed as history's first financial bubble, a tale of flowers, frenzy, and foolishness. But the deeper story reveals a complex interplay of culture, economics, psychology, and early modern finance that challenges our assumptions about speculation and human behavior. Far from being merely a comedic footnote of financial absurdity, Tulip Mania reflects the dynamics that drive markets even today. The seduction of novelty, the social prestige attached to rare assets, the contagious nature of collective belief, and the ease with which value becomes untethered from reality when speculation replaces utility. To understand Tulip Mania, one must return to the Dutch Republic of the early 1600s, a society experiencing one of the most extraordinary economic expansions in European history. The Dutch Golden Age was a period of maritime dominance, scientific innovation, urban affluence, and global trade networks that brought spices, silks, exotic goods, and unprecedented wealth to Dutch cities. Amsterdam emerged as a financial powerhouse, home to the world's first modern stock exchange and a thriving merchant class whose fortunes rose with the ships that crisscrossed the world. It was in this climate of optimism, abundance, and entrepreneurial energy that the tulip, an exotic flower imported from the Ottoman Empire, captured the imagination of an entire society. Tulips were unlike anything Europeans had seen before. Their vibrant colors, intricate flame-like patterns, and unpredictable variations made them botanical marvels. The rarest varieties, particularly those affected by a mosaic virus that produced spectacular streaks, became status symbols among the wealthy. Owning rare tulips signaled taste, sophistication, and social distinction. Florists, botanists, and merchants cultivated a culture around tulip collecting, treating the flowers not merely as plants, but as works of natural art. As demand grew, tulips transitioned from luxury goods to speculative assets. People began trading bulbs the way they traded spices and shares of the Dutch East India Company. Contracts emerged allowing buyers and sellers to trade future rights to bulbs still in the ground. Prices rose steadily, then sharply, as scarcity, prestige, and anticipation combined to fuel a market increasingly unmoored from agricultural reality. The rise of tulip speculation was also linked to the broader financial innovation of the Dutch Republic. Futures contracts, options, and transferable promissory notes, tools familiar in modern finance, were already in use. Tulip contracts were traded in taverns, guild halls, and informal markets by people from all walks of life. Merchants, artisans, craftsmen, and even laborers. These traders were not irrational. They were participating in a system that, for a time, seemed perfectly logical. As more buyers entered the market, prices rose. As prices rose, more people believed tulips were a path to prosperity. It was a self-reinforcing cycle, driven by social contagion. The stories of individuals making fortunes from a single bulb spread through towns and villages, transforming tulip trading into a cultural phenomenon. The desire for quick wealth was not the disease, it was the symptom of a deeper shift in how people perceived value. By the early 1632s, the market reached a fever pitch. Some bulbs sold for prices comparable to houses, livestock, or years of skilled labor. The most prized varieties, Semper Augustus, Viceroy, Admiral van der Eyck, became legends whispered about in trading circles. The symbolism of tulips transcended economics. They became emblems of the Dutch Golden Age, representing beauty, refinement, and the promise of prosperity. Yet beneath this upward surge lay fundamental instability. Tulip bulbs were perishable, slow to propagate, and subject to disease. Supply constraints created rarity. But the market was not built on botanical truth. It was built on expectation. The turning point came abruptly in February 1637. At an auction in Haarlem, buyers failed to show up, and contracts that had soared in value suddenly could not be sold at any price. Panic rippled through the market. Confidence evaporated in an instant, and tulip prices collapsed. Contracts became worthless. Fortunes evaporated. Lawsuits erupted as buyers and sellers argued over obligations. Attempts by Dutch authorities to stabilize the situation by allowing contract cancellations for a fraction of the original price failed to restore calm. The mania had ended as rapidly as it had begun, leaving behind confusion, disbelief, and countless cautionary tales. Yet the aftermath of tulip mania is more nuanced than popular mythology suggests. Contrary to exaggerated accounts written decades later, the collapse did not destroy the Dutch economy. It ruined many individuals, but did not topple cities or industries. The Dutch Republic remained a global powerhouse for decades afterward. Tulip mania was not the catastrophe often portrayed. It was a cultural and financial shock that revealed the vulnerabilities of a society experimenting with early speculative markets. What it truly exposed was the psychology of speculation, how scarcity can inflate desire, how social pressure can distort judgment, how narratives can overpower facts, and how quickly belief can turn to doubt when the spell breaks. What makes tulip mania so enduring in the modern imagination is not its scale, but its symbolism. It encapsulates a pattern repeated throughout history in the South Sea bubble, the dot-com boom, the housing crisis, cryptocurrency surges, and countless smaller episodes. Tulip mania continues to serve as a metaphor for the madness of crowds, the fragility of speculative bubbles, and the timeless human tendency to treat assets not for what they are, but for what we hope they will become. It represents a moment when economic rationality bowed to collective excitement, when flowers became fortunes, and when fortunes dissolved like morning dew. And as we trace the arc from tulip's arrival in Europe to its peak as a speculative asset and its dramatic fall, we uncover not merely a historical curiosity, but a window into the forces that shape all markets' desire, fear, imitation, scarcity, and the endless human search for opportunity, even at the edge of reason, where beauty becomes currency, and ambition transforms everyday objects into symbols of wealth, driving speculation to heights that ultimately Gui Ke Chuyen Tai Chin Da Noi, a collapse that revealed not only the fragility of speculative markets, but also the deeper truths about how societies construct value, how narratives overpower facts, and how quickly collective confidence can turn into collective fear when the illusion shatters. In the second phase of tulip mania's story, the focus shifts from the dramatic rise and fall of prices to the aftermath, how Dutch society processed the shock, how legal and financial systems responded, and why tulip mania became such a powerful symbol in economic history despite its relatively contained damage. The immediate reaction to the crash was confusion. Many traders who had committed to buying bulbs at peak prices suddenly refused to honor their contracts. Once values plummeted, sellers, in turn, demanded enforcement. Courts were flooded with disputes. Should tulip contracts be considered binding legal obligations or mere wagers? This ambiguity stemmed from the fact that tulip trading had emerged informally outside established mercantile law. Contracts were often signed in taverns, based on trust and the excitement of the moment. When prices collapsed, the legal system had no clear precedent for handling the fallout. The Dutch government intervened cautiously, proposing that buyers could cancel their contracts by paying a modest penalty far below the original price. This compromise angered sellers, who saw their expected fortunes vanish, and disappointed buyers, who still faced financial losses. Yet, it reflected a practical truth. Enforcing full payment would have been economically and socially disastrous. The compromise helped prevent mass bankruptcies and contain the damage before it could ripple into wider markets. Culturally, tulip mania left a lasting imprint on the Dutch psyche. Satirical pamphlets, paintings, and poems mocked the craze, portraying speculators as fools, blinded by greed. Artists depicted monkeys trading tulips, a symbolic indictment of irrational behavior. Moralists sermonized about excess, vanity, and the dangers of easy wealth. These cultural artifacts played a crucial role in shaping tulip mania's legendary reputation, transforming a relatively contained market disruption into a timeless, cautionary tale. The Dutch, known for their prudence and mercantile discipline, used the episode as a mirror to reflect on the risks of speculation. In doing so, they reinforced cultural norms around financial responsibility that would strengthen Dutch commercial institutions for generations. Economically, the crash had limited long-term effects. Contrary to popular myth, tulip mania did not cause a national depression. The Dutch economy was far too diverse, anchored in global trade, shipbuilding, banking, and manufacturing, to be derailed by a single speculative episode. Most participants in tulip trading were middle-class artisans and merchants, not the poorest or the wealthiest. Losses were painful, but not system-threatening. The stock market, real estate market, and East India Company trade continued as usual. Amsterdam remained the world's financial capital. What makes Tulip Mania remarkable, therefore, is not the scale of the economic damage, but the scale of its symbolic power. It served as an early demonstration of how asset bubbles form and burst, even in a society admired for its rationality and discipline. Another important dimension of the aftermath is how Tulip Mania influenced financial regulation. Though the Dutch did not impose sweeping reforms, the episode prompted greater scrutiny of speculative contracts and contributed to the gradual formalization of futures markets. Merchants became more cautious. Brokers demanded clearer terms. Guilds maintained stricter oversight. These changes helped prevent similar manias in subsequent decades and strengthened the Dutch Republic's reputation for financial stability. In this sense, Tulip Mania functioned as a formative stress test for one of the world's first modern capitalist systems. Looking deeper, Tulip Mania also provides insight into human psychology. It shows how people anchor value in stories: the story of rarity, the story of prestige, the story of wealth without toil. In a society flush with prosperity, people felt insulated from risk. Social contagion amplified enthusiasm. The very novelty of tulips made them ideal vehicles for imagination and aspiration. When everyone believes an asset will rise in value, it often does until it doesn't. The collapse exposed the fragility of value that exists only because people collectively agree it exists. This is not unique to tulips. It applies to cryptocurrencies, collectibles, real estate, stocks, and even national currencies. Tulip Mania is thus an early example of a universal pattern. Markets are built not only on fundamentals, but on trust, emotion, and narrative. What ultimately made Tulip Mania endure in historical memory was the storytelling that followed. Writers of the 18th and 19th centuries exaggerated its scale, using it to criticize speculation, capitalism, and human folly. These accounts, though embellished, ensured that Tulip Mania became a permanent metaphor for bubbles. Its real significance lies somewhere between myth and reality. The myth warns of the dangers of irrational exuberance. The reality reveals a society experimenting with early financial tools, navigating the balance between innovation and risk. Both perspectives are valuable. Tulip Mania reminds us that bubbles are not anomalies. They are recurring features of economic life, arising when optimism outpaces understanding and when the desire for wealth overwhelms caution. In the end, the Dutch Tulip Mania was not simply about flowers or prices. It was about the human impulse to chase possibility, to gamble on beauty, and to believe in stories that promise transformation. It was about a society wealthy enough to experiment with risk and wise enough to learn from the consequences. And it stands today as a symbol part cautionary tale, part historical curiosity, part universal mirror reflecting the timeless truth that markets, like the people who create them, are driven as much by dreams and emotions as by logic and math. Completed.